if I was to ask you now, who are you? Well, basic question. I think you've heard that question many times. What you would probably do, and I would do the same, I would probably turn back to the past and dig in my memories things that I think are the basis of saying me, who am I? I would probably say, well, this is where I am born, this is what I did, this is where I studied, this is my job, this is my family. And I would like us to think for a few seconds that it's kind of funny that for defining ourselves, we almost immediately turn back in the past for who we are. And to that regard, I think we are pretty much like archaeologists. We dig in the past for defining who we are now. That's a common thing, and I'm okay with this. It's not a problem. But what I would like to introduce through these two talks is all the value of looking at ourselves not in terms of being an archaeologist, but being an architect. And the architect looked at the piece of land, and instead of digging for ruins, would try to see what can be built there. And that topic has really a lot to do with how we perceive ourselves, and that's going to be really the focus of these two sessions. That the way we build our inner story defines so much about how we are going to behave and how we're going to lead our spiritual life. That we may turn into the future to find a food that's going to be nurturing our progress, and that we're going to break through the sense of ordinariness, the sense of looking at ourselves and always tapping in the same, oh, I cannot meditate because I've tried many times. Oh, I cannot study English because I'm bad in languages. Oh, I'm bad in this and that. Tapping, digging again in the future to define how we are going to perform an action today. And from a Buddhist perspective, even though what I've just said may not look so much what you've heard in Buddhism, the content is there. So there is something strange in whenever we define ourselves, we are tapping in the past that also sometimes we are exaggerating, building stories, thinking that this past is so real while we miss the opportunity to look in the future, or we see the future that anyway is going to happen and we think it's a fantasy. And that's a very strange concept for someone like a Buddha who sees all the potential of every being. Why do we keep ourselves looking at things that deplete us of spiritual energy while not tapping in a vast reservoir of power, potential that we have? How to break through the ordinary perception of ourselves. That's what we're going to observe during these two sessions. But before we start, let's take a nice, comfortable position. We're going to do a bit of calm abiding meditation to prepare our mind for what will come. So find a nice comfortable position in which you could stay for about 20 minutes. Very important to allow the posture to be comfortable. And from that posture, we can establish ourselves in an unmoving posture, just staying still. Not because we prevent ourselves from moving, because we recognize that being physically still allows for the mind to be sharp and active and bright. And when we dissolve some of the tension that we feel in the shoulders, on our face, in the back, let's observe if there is a slight change in our experience. Because there, at the time where we dissolve the tension, we have the great opportunity to try to make it symbolic of, okay, my day of work is over. This is the time to look inside, to relax, and to enjoy. Let's experience how it feels. And now let's turn our mind to the breath. And even though it might be totally fine that our breath is a bit noisy, what we are encouraged to aim at is to have a breath that has three characteristics. That's what we find in many Buddhist scripture, no matter they come from China or Southeast Asia, Sri Lanka, Tibet. That the breath, one, should aim at being silent. Because the breath has to do with inner movement of energy, what we call lung in Tibetan, prana in Sanskrit, chi in Chinese. The breath has a very strong relationship with these inner movement of energy. And Asanga, great Indian master, tells that if we keep our breath gross, like forceful and noisy, we might even hurt ourselves physically. So to make it as subtle as possible. Obviously that requires us to accept how the breath is tonight, but that's the direction we go toward. So let's pay attention to the in and out breath. We can use our mental voice to label in, out, if it helps us to keep track of the breathing. And pretty much like when we calm down a baby, our baby, we take time. If the baby is crying, we really take care, but we lead the baby to calm down. Let's be very kind with the way we are dealing with our breath. Which requires some time to just accept that our breath is noisy, unpleasant, and forceful. The second characteristic is that our breath might be unheard, not noisy, but it might very well be irregular. Like, not like a wave, not like, and I really like this analogy. Imagine like there are some seaweeds in California, I think, probably many other places. They really are close to the shore, and with the movement of the sea, they just move in a very regular way. They don't start to do like, they just move like very smoothly. Let's make our breath as smooth as that. You can imagine the waves on the shore, you can imagine these kelp, these seaweeds. Silent breath, regular breath. Let's try. Let's go in that direction. And from time to time we can check the state of our body, check our shoulders. But if our body stays quiet and we aim to that kind of quality breath, it's going to be very much easier for the mind to settle down. Let's make the breath as a beautiful landscape, beautiful piece of nature. And if we want, we can count the breath from 1 to 10 if we think it can help us to maintain our focus. And the way we do that is we breathe in, we breathe out, we count 1 and then 2 and to 10 and then we stop, we do a little break. Let's try with a breath that is silent and regular, smooth. Wonderful. And then the last quality, our breath might be silent. It might also be irregular, but we might exert a kind of unpleasant effort. So the last characteristic is to make the breath effortless, spontaneous, natural. So silent, and then regular, and then effortless. And when it's effortful, it might not be nice to stay with the breath. Effortless is we don't exert a power, a willpower. The breath has found its natural rhythm. Let's try. And it means to adapt to our physical situation. When we're just coming from running, for example, or doing strong physical activity, we might need to breathe more. After a big meal, we might need to breathe more. So natural rhythm doesn't mean there's one rhythm that is valid for every moment of the day. Every moment is different and we have to adapt to that. Adapting to the breath is a very subtle effort, very subtle exercise. And when we meditate, there are so many changes that happen. It's not because there are changes that we just should not look at them. One part of the meditative process is to just look back and say, well, I feel a change. I feel a slight improvement in the relationship between my mind and my body, in the way my body is just sitting, that it's more comfortable. It's okay to look back and to acknowledge these things, because that fuels that later on when you go back to meditation, there is more joy. So let's see if there is a tiny change in the way we breathe, because the more we look at it, the more we can maintain and develop and increase it in a very light way. And now with the environment of our mind and our body right now, let's just establish our motivation. That in this time where I think we're pretty aware of the down part of cyclic existence, of samsara, of meeting things that we don't want, of being parted from things that we like, all these various stress and troubles that we encounter, to restore our conviction that there is something we can do. We can transform our mind. We can calm down our mental afflictions. And for that we are gaining conviction in the source of those techniques, namely Buddha, his teaching, and the Sangha. So we take refuge, we go for that refuge because we know it's a reliable refuge. This is the direction I want to go. This is meaningful. This is making good use of this life, for sure. And I do that to bring to completion all my qualities so I can be of help to others, my brothers and sisters, no matter what form and place they live. Okay. Beyond the ordinary perception. That was a topic very close to Lama Yeshe. I think you can read of that topic in his introduction to Tantra. And that's obviously a very dear topic to Vajrayana, Tantrayana, to those practices that take the result into the path. But we're not going to touch so much in Tantra during these two sessions. Hopefully we'll give you a bit more curiosity to know about Tantrayana. But we're going to use the common path of Sutrayana to back up these talks. So self-identification. When I think of myself, it's not an abstract thing. When I think of myself, I always have to look for something, for a basis. Be it my body, be it my mind, my emotions. And when we are thinking of ourselves, it's very often we go back to the past, helplessly. So I'm going to start with a question that bothers me a bit. Because you probably all heard in Buddhism that we are changing moment by moment. We are impermanent, right? You accept that? We are impermanent? No. Yeah, we are impermanent. So what does it mean that we are impermanent? It means that one moment of ourselves transforms into the next moment. Our nature changes. The very core of ourself, our entity, changes from one moment to another without any stop, without any break. So when we identify ourselves, I'm born in Burgundy in France. I'm 45. I'm 45. That's right. I forgot it. We are taking as a basis something often that is not there anymore. I'm a student. I'm studying Buddhism, but right now I'm not studying it. It's something that I did, and I'm going to do that in the future, but right now I'm not doing it. And this, my question is a bit strange maybe, but how can I say I was a child? I was a student in acting school. Because the me now that remembers the past, I was not there when I was 18. So when I say I was, if I'm changing moment by moment, how can I say I was there? You see a bit what I want to... It's a bit tricky, no? Because myself, all the atoms in my body are in a different shape right now than they used to be even 1 second ago. My mind is totally different. So when I say I was a baby, well, obviously it's not François right now that was a baby, because otherwise it means my body and mind would have to be there at the time I was a baby. It's strange, no? If we are changing moment by moment, how can I say I was a baby? I was not a baby. Because me now, I cannot go back in the past and say, oh, I was a baby. If I'm changing moment by moment, how I can use my memory accurately? How I can identify myself to what I was like even 5 minutes ago? If we really understand impermanence, that we're changing moment by moment, how can we identify ourselves on something that is long gone and that I'm now totally different from that? Well, that bothers me a bit. But we can, obviously, because if I could only relate to myself to what is happening now, I could say nothing. I could not say even I was born, because I could not use this memory. If I was only relying to what I am now, I would be so limited. So there must be a way to answer that question and to establish a validity in saying, well, I was there. Yeah, I was there. And you might think that this question is a bit strange, but I often encounter people who have problems saying, I will become a Buddha. Because is it François with this body who's the Buddha? Because obviously it's not, because the body is going to transform. How can I say I was a dog in my previous life, for those who believe in past lives? Even how can I say I was a baby? Well, this is food for your thoughts. We'll see next week maybe if we answer that. Or maybe today. We'll see. What I want to introduce by that is that the François that exists now is the only one that exists. The François of yesterday is no longer there. But still I can say I was there. And we are building stories. Imagine, whenever you encounter a situation in your life, it's like you gain a card in poker. You have a deck. Whenever you have a memory, you have a poker card. An ace, a king, a queen. So with memory, with experience, we start to have many cards in our hands. But somehow, there are very few that we're going to keep, and it's a good thing because we don't have to memorize everything. But somehow we're going to choose specific cards, and we're going to make a big thing out of it. We identify ourselves on past experience, on things that we've done, and it takes a huge space in our mind. A bit like you play poker with regular cards, but somehow those cards, they transform into the big cardboard card of Walt Disney. So you're playing you're playing poker and suddenly you end up with Mary Poppins or Cinderella or Bambi cards, which obviously you cannot play with this. It's just useless. But that's what we end up with. We see ourselves with time, with some cards that look very strange to an external observer, but we hold them so dear and they define how we are now. And this takes all the space of our mind. I'm going to take an example. Well, I'm born in a family where hunting was standard. My brothers, my father, my grandfather, my uncles, everyone is hunting in France. It's a big thing. And when I started studying Buddhism, I really thought that I could not become vegetarian. I could not stop eating meat. That's impossible. Because I was always getting back to the same card, the big Bambi card. Well, it's accurate because his mother got killed by a hunter, I think, in the Disney movie. So I got the big Bambi card, which was, oh, my family, my heritage, everyone is hunting, everyone is eating meat so much, I cannot become vegetarian. Just an example. It's not for you to become vegetarian. It's just an example. There are many others. So I'm identifying on the basis of this card very strongly. This is me. This is who I am. And when I look at this card and I'm convincing myself it is so true, well, obviously it's hard to become vegetarian. Because if I'm non-vegetarian by nature, how I can become vegetarian? So by experience, we build up these cards. Some of them are related to reality, they are okay, but often we get stuck with these Disney cards that shape our decisions in the present, that shape the way we do progress spiritually, and that really hinders us. Obviously, it has to do with afflictions, but I'm not going to mention that so much. Just the fact that we go back as archaeologists, not to some existing ruins. It's like I'm an archaeologist and I pretend I found in the ground a Mickey Mouse. And I go to a university and I say, I think I found a Mickey Mouse from 2,000 years ago. Well, obviously no one is going to believe what I say. That's totally unrealistic. But aren't we do that with the way we perceive ourselves? This very narrow, limited perspective. This very ordinary, periscopic vision. In Tantrayana, this way we perceive ourselves is the basis of us being in samsara. This very ordinary way that when I'm thinking of myself and I'm doing a spiritual activity like learning, like meditation, I could do the same. I go back to the Donald Duck cards and it's, oh François, come on, you've learned many times meditation, you've read many books about it, you've tried many times. This is not for you. Very ordinary, low self-esteem kind of digging in the past, in our experience. Very unfortunate. So, yes, when we are thinking of ourselves, it's normal that we think of the past. I'm not saying archaeologists are bad. Obviously, we need some. But if we are using always fake things that we dig from the ground, then there's a point in which it's going to be useless. And it works for meditation, it works when even the way we perceive others. I go back to that person who hurt me in the past, and whenever I see that person, I take the cards of the bad guy. And it's very hard to overcome the memory we have of our relationship. Because our tendency is to go back and to dig. To go back and to dig. So in Tantrayana, there are two aspects. First is the appearance of ourselves and the external world in a very ordinary way, and our belief that it's only like that. These are the two aspects. These are the two main problems that prevent one to become a Buddha. That's the perspective in Tantrayana. So now you accept, I think, that you could say, well, I was a baby, I was studying there. So we are using something that is not existing anymore. I'm not a baby anymore, but I can say I was a baby. So my question now is, if the past is gone, it's no longer existing, and it still can define who I am in a correct way. Yeah, that's true. I'm French for the moment. And it's many things that are not happening anymore. Why can't I use things that are not yet happening, that belong to the future? Because I cannot rely only on what's happening now to define ourselves. I could also say, well, I'm going to die. That's the reality of my life. I can label myself on the fact that being a human, I will have to die at one point. This is in my nature. I will probably age a bit more. That's also in my nature. But these are things that are maybe not so elevating. Why can't I use things that I could become and things that I will become? Because in the same way, these things are not happening right now. And that's opening a perspective to something extremely positive. Very positive. That is the fuel of loving kindness that people can transform, and that I can visualize those being transformed. So now it opened my heart. That I can visualize myself in the future having lots of quality, and it will serve me now. There's a big trend now of future self. Many books. I've started reading one. I found it really bad because that was mostly about getting success and fame, but the inception of that was to bring our future self now, what we would like to become, and to pretend we have it now. Well, obviously, this is fueled probably from Hindu and Buddhist tradition of Tantrayana, in which we do exactly the same. But instead of digging back in the past to to have a basis on who we are that sometimes is not helpful in our spiritual path. What if I was to tap in what I will become for sure, so that whenever I engage in a practice, my starting point is not the same? If you start meditation by thinking, oh, no, François, you try again once. Yeah, you can try. Yeah, go try once. But you know, you know what's going to happen. You know very well. You've tried many times. Yeah. You know this habit, this addiction, these things. You always go back to that. That's like that. When we engage in a practice like that, obviously we are hindered. This is so ordinary, periscopic, exaggerated. But when we start with the hope that we might progress, with the conviction of our potential, wow, this is totally different. This is so different. But now, one of the questions you might start to ask is, yeah, but how do I know I have a potential? Well, these are things that take time. We have to understand the nature of the mind, for example, the mind itself. There are many extra things we can meditate on to gain conviction. But I would remind us of a quote by William James, very famous psychologist, long time ago, I think it was 19th or 18th century, that for us at the moment it doesn't matter if it's going to happen or not, because there are many meditations that we imagine something that is not actually possible, but it's going to help us now. That's all what matters. And for as long as we don't expect that impossible thing to happen, which would be a problem, and we are okay with the fact that it's not here now, we can play with it, we can imagine. When I imagine, may all beings be happy, I'm imagining beings being all happy. They are not happy right now. But it opens my heart. So the question is not so much, how real is the expression of my potential, but how much I'm willing to try it now, to open my heart, to open my conviction, and to break through the ordinary sense of myself, to decrystallize the idea I have of myself. But the good news is that thinking of ourselves in terms of being a Buddha is not an imagination, because we will become a Buddha. We will become a Buddha. So that's something we can bring with even more conviction, that it's not just imagination. So let me go back to the quote of William James that can help us in our topic. There are then cases where a fact cannot come at all unless a preliminary faith exists in its coming, which basically the having faith into something will make that thing come into existence. And that's very close to what is proposed in Buddhism, that aspiration for something will bring about a result. Most of the time we have the belief that we engage into something and after only we have proof, then we can aspire to that. So there are facts that cannot come unless a preliminary faith exists in its coming. And to have faith that we can transform and faith that we will become enlightened, this can help us now. So I think we're going to do a 5-minute pause. Is that okay? Just for you to stretch? And then we'll resume. But I'm here if you want to share something or ask or whatever. I'm here anyway in the 5 minutes that we have. there's time for question.
How do we know, Francois?
Pardon?
How do we know? I'm not sure I understand what you said, but if I try to understand it, it feels like not to decide who I am based on what I did in the past, or what I was in the past, or how I tagged myself in the past, or if I failed, or okay, that's who I am. Yeah, it's me. That I'm like that. But instead to see myself differently in the future and then just fulfill it, just go for it. But how do I know? I mean, how does it really happen? How can I don't really know how to really make it happen. Even in small things that I want to change, like patterns that I want to change, I can imagine and use my imagination to see myself differently, but is it enough? You know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, the advice is just let's be smart. What is the most helpful? Is it really helpful to rely on always on past experience?
Of course not.
Yeah. So in Buddhism, there's a huge emphasis in the future. Huge emphasis in unlocking for ourselves the belief that we can transform. So how do we develop that? Well, to start with small steps, I would say. To start having a daily practice of loving kindness for ourselves, which means every day wishing ourselves of some things, imagining ourselves having these things.
And how can I be careful not to make it self-grasping?
How do you, pardon?
How can I make sure that I'm not caught in self-cherishing or self-grasping?
Well, because it's love. Love is not self-grasping. There's no self-grasping in love. If it's self-grasping, it's not love. But obviously, while you generate these wishes, may I be happy, how would that be if I was to be fully focused, fully in peace? There are steps in your experience that you will catch yourself grasping for the result. But that's part of the process. It's unavoidable almost. It's like when you practice shamatha, there's always a chance for you to get caught to that sense of peace and bliss and nice experience, but that's part of the training. But I would say to have a daily practice of wishing ourselves. How many of the spiritual practices in Buddhism rely on this aspiration? On breaking our ordinary perception of... Take for example bodhicitta. May I become a Buddha? May I I take refuge in the Buddha Dharma Sangha. May all beings be happy. Loving kindness, compassion. These are all based in a future potential that beings could reach that state of happiness and be free of their suffering. So I would say it's a training. It's a training. But it's so quick and easy to fall back into our self-limitation. I've experienced that. I just come from 3 months retreat, and at the time it goes well, it's so nice, but at the time it goes bad in the meditation, I'm reliving the past experience, thinking, well, that's it. Yeah, you fall back right from the start. You have not moved a single inch from where you were at the beginning. And these are the cards that I'm pulling out of my deck that are so strongly appearing to my eyes and that are so limiting. So the answer to that, and we're going to see that next week, the week that we have now, is to start to motivate ourselves to that training of breaking through the ordinary by having a daily interest to our future development, which is really in the core of what's loving kindness. Loving kindness is the wish, oh, okay, I'm going to wish myself to be happy, which means I have to create mentally a card that's not existing right now, but that will help me to unlock my self-limitation. So every day to build a bit upon that. And obviously there are some gentle Vajrayana practice that helps also for those who have taken empowerments and things like that, that are very useful. But I would say it's a training. It's a training. What is the smartest for us to look at? How much? Let's imagine I was like 18 and I would have a camera or a tablet with a movie of me at 45 being totally vegetarian, for example. I have this screen when I was 18. I could not keep on saying, oh, I'm from a vegetarian family, I'm from a eating family, even stopping drinking alcohol. I come from Burgundy. My goodness, wine is everywhere. I was 16 when I started to drink wine, and I got so caught into these fragrances. This comes from this very special vineyard. It's beautiful in Burgundy. It has a smell of slight tobacco when the tobacco is a little warm and nonsense. And I identify myself with being in a drinking family. I could not believe I could stop drinking one day. But I think I stopped drinking because I started to identify myself on, I'm not a drinker. But if I would have taken the film of me few years after, at the time I was still drinking, I could have stopped much faster, I think. So what is the meditation about? Is to make a mental tablet. To play with that imagination of, okay, I'm going to invent an idea of me 20 years from now stopping this or that and bring it now. It's an imagination. I'm not caught in, oh, it's going to happen exactly like that. But we will see that it unlocks something inside. And this is really at the core of loving kindness. If there's no imagination in loving kindness, how can I say, may all beings be happy? Well, it's just words. I have to imagine my father who is stressed being not stressed, even though that might not happen in his lifetime. Maybe he will not encounter deep peace. But by imagining, by bringing those images to a tablet mentally, I can break through the ordinary and just open my heart. Because as long as I keep the same image of myself and others, some are very limiting. It would be hard to change. It's going to be longer. And if I look back, I think these cards was the strongest hindrance for me to stop eating meat and drinking alcohol, for example. The strongest. It could have been much faster. Well, obviously I did it, so I'm happy now. But this is what we mean when we speak of ordinary. This image that comes naturally that hinders us to further progresses. Does it make sense, Edith?
Yes. Yeah, but I think it requires a lot of how to say, sincerity, honesty, or to be honest with oneself, in this, to honestly look back at ourselves when we meditate and imagine, and hold on to that with honesty.
Yeah. It's not easy, it's definitely not easy, because we will see many of our reserve not to do it. Oh, I'm playing with imagination. Buddhism should be very close to reality. Why am I imagining something? Well, it's not true. I'm just deceiving myself. Oh, I'm going to grasp to that. I'm going to be attached to the result. And I see myself when I practice loving kindness, compassion, meditation, so much of this like hindrances, like resistance not to do that. Very hard to wake up in the morning and say, okay, from now on for 20 minutes, I'm gonna see myself in the light of what I could become. Wow. Then you start the day with a different set of mind, right? And again, what I could become is not there. What I've done in the past is gone. So in the same way I can use them. What I want to convey is that between past and future, they are not happening now. So am I not smart enough, me, Francois, to use the thing that is helpful for me rather than to tell myself the same story and digging the same cut again and again?
I understand.
And that requires mind training. That requires us to meditate, to focus our mind on something we've chosen, that we've understood it's positive and constructive. And this is the real core of Tantrayana. I'm going to take my future Buddhahood and imagine it's happening now.
Yes, I understand.
And that is very powerful. That is very much beyond ordinary. Oh, limited, my Francois, my little. This is very, very different state of mind. And that's one of the reasons why Tantrayana is so effective, so powerful and so quick, because we take a basis to establish ourselves that is much more powerful than the limited version, that very often also is out of reality, is exaggerated, is not true. The idea I could never become vegetarian is not true. But that's what I kept repeating myself. I cannot do that. So obviously it's much harder when I think it's impossible.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And this is a topic that's very, very dear to my heart. And I think next week we'll see one part of a technique that is very helpful, that I find very helpful, is what we call request and inspiration. If we have to start to make requests to ourselves or to the Buddhas or to whatever, and imagine there's a technique that is found in all the Indo-Tibetan school, that we request to our future self or to the Buddhas, and we imagine getting the result in terms of light coming through our body. There's a beautiful imaginative, transformative way to visualize all these steps. by doing request and by receiving what they call blessing, but I don't like the word so much. I prefer much more inspiration. We're getting inspired as if we were now gaining the result. And we'll see also next week, how can I see myself as an enlightened figure now? Which I'm not, by the way. And just a hint for that. Close your eyes. Please close your eyes. Remember when you were at school, playing with your friends. You were a kid. You are in the courtyard and there are boys and girls and you're playing together. Just having this image in your mind. You are there and they're playing with you. Okay, I don't know if you got any memory of that. Did you? You did? So when you do that, you don't have to say I was, you can say I am. Because your memory, if I'm talking to you, I say I was there. But if you use your memory and you have a bright visualization, you can say I am. And that works a bit the same with getting Buddhahood. You take your future now, your future self, you becoming a Buddha, or you receiving blessing, or you getting shamatha, or you realizing emptiness, and you say, this is there. Because for you individually, in your own meditation, you can do that in the same way I was in the courtyard, you can say, I am there, I visualize that. And you can say, I am Buddha. It doesn't mean you believe you're Buddha right now, but you can still use that. You see a bit the opposite? It's the same. And actually, we'll see that. I'm preparing for next week, but we can actually think we are Buddha, and His Holiness says it's actually factually concordant, because this is what's going to happen. So that opens ourselves to label ourselves on the basis of something, wow, very powerful. Imagine yourself full of love, full of compassion. Even without taking Buddha figure as you can only do in the context of Tantrayana, but just having limitless loving kindness, wisdom. And with the same taste that you can remember being in the courtyard and saying, I am. You can do that in the opposite, saying, I am totally peaceful, totally loving, totally compassionate. And that opens the heart now. Okay, so let's take a comfortable meditating position. And let's bring to mind this idea of ordinary appearance. How much do we rely on those cards when it comes to meditation, to be kind, forgiving? Do we find ourselves ensnared in limited views of ourselves, related to patterns, experience, memories we have? if the past is gone and the future is not there, why do we keep ourselves always going back to the past? Helplessly. Well, it's great to go back to the past. There's so much we can gain out of it. But if we are building Disney cards, then it's going to be useless. Certainty of ourselves, lack of hope, self-deprecation, always tapping to the same story. These are ways at looking at the past that are not helpful for us now. How limiting it is. Like my story of becoming vegetarian or stopping drinking, or how many stories? Do you have example like that you can relate to? Let's remember. So really the first part of our exploration together is to get motivation, so that eventually we start to have this yearning, wow, that would be so nice that I would break through the ordinary, grasping at myself. Let's find those memories. And these cards that we use, these big cards, these big Disney cards, they are fake. They are imaginary. So why can't we use imaginary for the future? In a way, it helps us to actually gain what we will become that is definitely not imaginary. How would it be if I was to use a bit more what I can become? How would it be? And that is nothing more and nothing less than loving kindness for ourselves. Taken a bit differently maybe, but that's the same. That's what is aimed at. How would that be if I was to take food and sustenance in everything that I can become, that are realistic, possible? And if they are imaginary, as long as they serve me now to open my heart and to bring myself closer to Buddhahood and loving kindness and compassion, that is fine. This is totally fine. How would that be? If I was to open my sometime narrow perspective into something much vaster that encompasses much more than a limited, addictive, self-deprecating view. now I'm going to ask you something that might be a bit tricky to imagine. Let's take an achievement that you are proud of today, that you've done, that maybe you would not have believed 5 years ago, 10 years ago that you would have achieved it. So try to imagine yourself 5 years ago having a tablet of yourself 5 years after doing it. How would that feel? Just to see how we can be empowered by something that has not happened yet, that might happen, but it helps us now. You see what I mean? Yes? Okay, wonderful. So you can remind yourself of your strong belief that it was not possible, as if to relive that experience. And suddenly you see this screen and you see yourself. How would that be if you were sure that this will actually happen? And this game of the tablet, is spread through so many Buddhist teaching. It's not exactly explained like that. But those who've done shamatha retreat, you know the importance to start with how would that be if I was focused, still, peaceful. If my mind was pliant, I could move my mind to whatever I want. These are the things that will make a déclic, unlock something in the mind that is the very beginning of you starting to be better focused. You want to have loving kindness, you want to develop bodhicitta, the wish to be a Buddha, to be help of every being. It is said every day we should remind ourselves of what are the benefits of being a bodhisattva. I could recite mantra and they could like transform into reality. I could become like so important, I would be like the earth, that people could stand on it, imagining that. So it's really like having the tablet every day. So the exercise of the tablet is something that we might do every day because it brings so much strength, power, joy to unlock many of the beautiful qualities that we have that are dormant, and some to increase those that are already present, and to go beyond this ordinary perception. And I'm going to read back this beautiful saying of William James. There are then cases where fact cannot come at all unless a preliminary faith exists in its coming. So for the coming week, for those who are willing to do that, you can explore a bit these ideas of catching yourself in the storytelling of, oh, this is who I am. There's a sutra of the Buddha, which I will send you, by the way, which I prepared. It's called that we have these verbal cravings, which is not meant to be a good thing, that we are always saying, I might be, I am here, I am like this, I might be this, may I be here, may I will be like this. It's all these things that basically are supporting the stories. So to break through that is what was the topic of the day. And now there is some space for your comments. I would like you to share. Maybe it was not entirely clear what I said. I'm sorry. I come back from retreat and I haven't used my voice so much, so it might be a bit messy. I'm sorry about that. I'll try to do better in the coming times. So yes, sorry, Kfir, you wanted to say something.
Yes, I think that in some way, all our life we use the future and not only the past. Because if I'm willing to study, I don't know, I went to go to college to study education for kindergarten. So I went for studying because I was looking at the future to see if that's what I want to do. When I come to practice with Dharma friends or with FPMT, it's because I want to be a practitioner and I want to reach the goals. So I think everything that we do, when we go to the supermarket, I want to make lasagna, so I'm going to buy 1, 2, 3. We think about the future all the time for planning our life. So when I'm thinking, I mean, I can see, at least in my case, I hardly use the past. I'm mostly see, okay, what I'm doing right now and where is my destination.
Well, that's very, yeah, it's a very, I think it's very up to point that you are saying that. Obviously, yes, we are very connected in this body and mind that we have to the future. I'm not saying we are not connected to that, but when it comes to using what we could become in terms of qualities and breaking through the ordinary limitation we have, I think it's I hope I'm not saying a mistake that probably most of us don't use that so often. That this strong belief that you could be totally reaching shamatha, entering the path, becoming a bodhisattva. These are the things which I relate to the future. I'm not saying we are not never thinking about the future. So I took the angle of our self-limitation, and our self-limitation, they are often not, some of them are toward our craving that is too intense for the future, but a lot of them are because of our past experience. So it's a limited view, I accept, and it doesn't mean that we are never thinking of the future. Yeah.
Can I share something?
Yes, please.
What you said is very touching for me, and it's something that I adapted even in a more a wider way these last 2-3 years in Israel. Like, I felt that it's not the future that we have to look for, it exists already. Like I was saying to myself, to encourage myself and others, peace, for example, does exist. It just doesn't manifest yet. And all we have to do is find a way to make it happen. And for me, it's connected also to how, in my limited way, I understand emptiness. Because we say that, this is what I understand, that emptiness is the possibility for everything to exist. So it's there already. I'm already a Buddha, and peace can exist already. So the only thing is how to do it, how to support, or how to make it real, how to create the conditions so these things will be realized, will happen in some time, maybe now, maybe soon.
Well, I think, yeah, I totally share what you say. It's really deeply embedded in emptiness, for sure. And also, yeah, to have faith, I think. It's the starting point to so many practices, to have faith that peace can manifest because it's already dormant or manifesting already in many of us. So that's another topic, but to know the nature of the mind, to know that our problem and trouble are not touching the very nature of our mind, and to experience that in meditation really allows for us to think, well, yeah, then all the quality can unfold. It's possible. Someone else would like to share?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. I was counting on you, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great practice, because I went back, you said, taken an example of something you experienced, and if you would have this imaginary tablet. So I remembered my first days in Alanda, not first days, first years. Everything was so difficult. I would never believe that I would finish the BP, the basic program. I would never believe that I would do second time as a And even when I started to be teaching assistant, everything was so difficult. I would never believe that I would, at one point, it would be easy and enjoyable, and everything was so hard. So if I would have this imaginary tablet, or it's basically just the faith that I have the capacity to do it, everything could have been so much nicer and easier and empowering. And if I can take this leap backwards, then I think it's really easy to take this leap forward and do the same with the difficulties I have now, and to say, if I look back and it could have been so successful and so easy, then I can do it forward now for all the things I struggle at the moment. And it can be very empowering to figure it out forward.
Thank you. No, it's because we experienced that together because we were studying together. So it's true to have this tablet for the days where we were overwhelmed by the text. We were sleeping with poor sleep because we were stressed and it was too much to just have like a little tablet and say, okay, this is what's going to happen. I can relax. It would be okay. But you know, let's take, for example, Lama Tsongkhapa's Guru Yoga, like the teacher yoga. You're asking for wisdom. Let's say you're asking, and that's what we're going to do a bit next week, you're asking for specific things that we miss. Because without aspiring, it's hardly possible that we can have the result. So you're asking, and then you imagine a Buddha figure or whatever, emanating light that enters your body, and that all your body becomes pure light that is made of these things that you're asking. Be it that it's soothing your body, bringing peace, or bringing wisdom. Now I'm doing memorization every day just to see this light coming, imagining it's a wisdom that helped me to memorize quickly. I notice that then going back to my application for memorization, it's much faster because it's not the François, oh, I never can memorize this silly definition anymore. It's, wow, I have potential. And the very starting point is different when you visualize all these things. So that's what we're going to do next week. So I think it's time now that Tal got the very good idea of bringing a prayer that was composed by Lama Zopa. I think that was for 2001, 11. I think this is right. He translated, but he decided to translate it for that occasion and for what we experience in the world, not only in Israel but in many places. I think it is really up to point. So I think Yael is gonna read it, right?
Yeah, we put it, but Francois,
Yes.
I want to make you dedications before or after.
Ah, okay, yes. Yes, so let's do the dedication maybe before, and then we can listen to Yael's to the prayer. So we are very fortunate to have these teachings that are accessible to us. Some of the Sutra paths, which means it's a bit of a longer journey, and some of the Tantrayana, which are much faster. So let's aspire that one day we'll enter into this fast, swift path, that we bring this result of what we will become so strongly into our practice that our effort and our qualities are just transforming so fast. Let's hope that one day we will make sense of these practices so that very quickly we can fully open our heart to every being's. May I never forget how much I can achieve. May I bring that to my practice on a daily basis. And by opening my heart and my wisdom and my qualities, may I be of help in these most needed time. So everything that I've cultivated, that are planted in my mind during this practice tonight, may they serve that big picture beyond the ordinary. But beyond the ordinary doesn't mean it's impossible. It's just beyond our scope right now, beyond what we can fathom with our mind. Doesn't mean it's untrue. Doesn't mean it's not going to manifest. So let's wish for that result to manifest as soon as possible.